Isn't that lovely? The pages, like flower petals or butterflies. Luminous and black. Who can explain the fascination of fire? What draws us to it, whether we're young or old?
In 1966, acclaimed French filmmaker Francois Truffaut released his first movie shot entirely in colour and his first and only film recorded in English. He took Ray Bradbury's 1953 dystopian sci-fi tale of future firemen, whose job it is to burn books in an attempt at mass censorship, and turned it into one of the oddest films of the 60s. Now, I'm not totally sure if it's Truffaut's French approach to an American classic, or the fact that he brought along the oddly detached Oskar Werner, the Austrian leading man he previously worked with in Jules and Jim. But the result is a fascinatingly bizarre story of one man's awakening to a reality of government control, and a reality that, strangely enough, is beginning to float into view in today's society. This is Fahrenheit 451. Let's take a look. So in the not too distant future, one that's a conformist and carefully regimented state, our protagonist Montag, played by Oskar Werner, begins to feel disillusioned with his life. He's a future fireman whose job it is to find and burn books. You see, in the future, any literature that could upset, offend or get people thinking and feeling anything have been banned. Now, Montag's disillusionment isn't initially surprising. At work, his boss is a bit of a slime ball. His co-workers are all his enemies, ready to grass him up at the first opportunity. And at home, his wife, Linda, played by Christie, is a consumer-obsessed twerp, really, who spends her days watching bonkers TV shows.
What do you think, Linda?
Look, we're here, they're waiting for you.
I think that...
You see, Linda agrees with me.
It seems like a bit of a mundane life for him until he bumps into Clarice, who's also played by Christie. More on that in a moment. And after spending a bit of time with her, something awakens in him. And before you know it, instead of burning books, Montag starts hoarding and reading them, and it's only a matter of time before someone, maybe even his own wife, will turn him in. So yes, this is a bit of an odd film, but probably an underrated one. It takes place in a future that doesn't feel instantly like science fiction. There's no attempt to make this future look futuristic, really, with the exception of some sequences featuring a monorail that I was quite shocked to find out was actually built in France in the late 50s, at least as a test track, but was removed after filming had been completed. I do like how the TV screens featured in the film closely resemble today's flat wall-mounted TVs, as opposed to the curved versions that we sometimes see on sci-fi films of the time. Otherwise, the action takes place in mostly the countryside or small towns and housing estates, with only one ill-conceived and poorly dated sci-fi effects sequence that stands out as a bit of a blemish. Oof. And there is a bizarre sequence where Montag's wife appears to have some kind of overdose on sleeping pills, and rather than have the ambulance arrive for a couple of technicians with some form of stomach pump machine come to replace her blood or something. Now, I don't really think this is the case, but I do quite like the idea that his wife may not be completely real and may be some kind of Blade Runner style replicant. But I think really she's just a bit of a goon that is constantly pill popping just to help her get through the day. Anyway, with that being said, I think Fahrenheit 451 shows us a future that's already here in a lot of ways, with Truffaut showing us a society in denial of unpleasantness, desperate to remain unoffended, an age of being addicted and totally drawn into television shows as if they were real life. And the movie has a strange kind of disconnect about it that I'll admit to not particularly liking when I first watched this film. I think it is a necessary part of the story, a society disconnected from emotion. But the fact that its director spoke only French and was directing an English-speaking film with an all-English crew must have fed into that. And the fact that he also fell out with his leading man during filming must have also played into the film's overall atmosphere. So François Truffaut, unable to secure actresses such as Tippi Hedren and Jean Seberg, ended up having Christie play both Montag's self-obsessed wife and the lady who becomes the catalyst for his rebellion. And I don't know how controversial this is, but I'm not the biggest Christie fan. She'd just come off Dr. Zhivago here, which I didn't really like her in either, and she'd go on to make Nicholas Roeg's Don't Look Now. I'm not sure if she just plays these detached, distant parts on purpose or if that's just her actual range. I'll be fair to her though, she does play two roles here, and you do believe that they are two completely different people. So Oskar Werner, who outside of Jules and Jim and The Spy Who Came In From the Cold, I'll admit to not being hugely familiar with. I think this came at quite a late stage in his career, and he had a fractured relationship with Truffaut during making Fahrenheit 451 over artistic differences, and this apparently triggered an already unhealthy drinking problem that the actor had, which pretty much set into motion, the decline of his career. Here, Werner's acting style's pretty much spot on for the material. He's very stern and serious when dealing with his work in the opening acts of the movie, but you do see him soften when he's around the rebel Clarice in a way that he doesn't around his own wife.
I don't think I've seen your wife. What's she like?
She's rather like you, except her hair's long.
Rather like me?
Quite like you.
Now, even if you haven't seen Fahrenheit 451, it probably won't surprise you to learn that Montag's secret fascination with literature can't remain a secret for long, and that before long he'll be on the run from his previous employers. It's Charles Dickens' classic David Copperfield, along with the lovely Christie, of course, which propels him to rebel against the fascist normality of his life. However, it's in a harrowing scene of book burning and human sacrifice that becomes the final straw for Montag. Now, personally, I've yet to read Ray Bradbury's book about book burning, but I understand it's one of his most popular titles. The title itself, Fahrenheit 451, refers to the temperature at which book paper apparently catches fire. I love the idea in the film that firemen don't actually put out fires, they start them. When questioned about his job, Montag reassures someone that all houses are now fireproof, so there's no need for those ancient methods of firefighting. I'm only assuming that all buildings and vehicles, etc., are now fireproof. So watching Fahrenheit 451 closely again, you'll notice that there's no words on screen other than the doomed books and the final credits. But even the opening credits are spoken by a narrator, and all the books and newspapers seem now to be in wordless comic book form. However, it is interesting to note that Montag is actually able to read despite apparently being raised in a bookless world. The film features a brilliantly frustrating ending as we discover a world of rebels and the methods that they use to preserve the world's literary masterpieces. The film's director, Francois Truffaut, the movie critic turned filmmaker, would not make another English language film after his experiences here, which makes Fahrenheit 451 an odd entry in his filmography. And it's the oddness that makes the film. It's something the well-meaning 2018 remake couldn't really capture. The sheer matter-of-factness with which most of society accepts books as harmful is pretty unnerving, and the idea that television is more satisfying than real life is uncomfortably close to the bone these days. Go check it out.